r/Nosleep. Posted by u/South I-1234. The reason we can't go through mirrors is because the thing inside always blocks your way. I'm not implying that anyone should ever try going through one. Actually, don't ever do so. One night a few months back, as I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom, I suddenly ducked down because I thought I heard a cockroach near the ceiling right on top of me. I could have sworn my reflection was a beat off. Feeling a bit creeped out, I rushed back to my room. After that, for an entire month I avoided mirrors altogether, afraid of what I might see in it. I won't go through the details, but it was a surprisingly hard thing to do. Then one day, I decided that it must have all been inside my head, and finally went to take a look at myself in front of the bathroom mirror. My reflection wasn't there to greet me. Then I made the single worst mistake in my life. I touched the mirror. Or, to be accurate, I reached out to the border of the mirror and found that I didn't feel the glass I was supposed to feel. My hand went straight through. The moment I found out that we could go through mirrors was also the moment I found out that it was a one-way passage. I was unable to pull my hand back out. It felt like my hand was stuck in cement, and the more I struggled, the more I went in. First my wrist, then my arm. I tried pushing against it, but it only resulted in my other arm also being stuck. Just as I called out for help, I heard a high-pitched screech from inside the mirror. Then a dragging noise that appeared to be coming closer, probably from the living room inside. I instantly decided to go through the mirror completely and find a place to hide. I shoved myself in the closet in my mirrored room while whatever's making the noise went to the bathroom and left. When it didn't screech, it made an inhaling sound. Only inhaled and never exhaled. After what felt like hours, when I no longer heard anything, I crawled out of my hiding. The first thing I noticed is that I no longer recognized the written language. Everything is horizontally flipped, mirrored. And that everything, and I mean everything, felt like glass. Even the blankets and cushions. I tried going back through the bathroom mirror, and to my surprise, the mirror is the only thing that didn't feel like glass. It didn't feel like anything. It felt like emptiness. An open door that you can't pass through. I snuck my way to take a peek in the living room, and I saw me. The mirrored version of me. He just stood there, with an empty look on his face, staring into nothingness, inhaling and not exhaling. The living room, unlike the bathroom, was very dimly lit. The light source seemed to come from the TV screen, which was turned off, but I could vaguely make out a reflection of the room from the screen. The mirrored me was, for some reason, adjusting himself so that he doesn't appear in the reflection. Deciding it was probably best not to let him see me, I went back to my room and climbed out of the window. Everything outside was dark. Windows were dimly glowing, but the streets were almost pitch black. You can feel that it was noon, because occasionally a car would drive by and you can see the yellow sunlight from the reflections on its windows, and the reflected objects on this side would also be lit that it seemed as though the sun was shining on them. It was as if things could only be seen, or even exist, if they are a reflection from the other side. A woman that stood lifelessly on the corner of the street suddenly moved across the street towards the front window of a clothing shop. She didn't actually walk, it felt more like she was dragged by the head towards her destination, her feet scraping across the pavement every inch she went. She only started to smile and walk when she neared the window, mimicking the person on the other side of the glass. The woman on the other side admired her reflection for some time, then decided to put her palm against the glass. The reflection mimicked her, reaches out her palm and puts it against the palm of the woman on the other side. From my point of view, there was no actual glass separating them, their palms are directly in contact, yet the woman didn't feel anything odd. I feel a knot in my stomach forming. I took off. The world was empty and crudely made, one of the street lamps was missing its pole, and there was a park bench that only had one leg. There was only void in the horizon. I considered going back into my room, so I took a glance back. And there it was, my reflection staring at me from the window. He opened his mouth to let out a screech and started to be dragged towards me. Other reflections noticed and started moving towards me. I started running. As I ran, I noticed the silhouette of a gigantic figure looming over the sky. There were strings dangling from it, puppet strings? I ran inside what's possibly a small grocery store, too dark to tell, and began smashing every glass and mirror in sight. I covered up every last piece of shard to the point that all light sources were snuffed out and I was left in complete darkness. Was that enough to stop them? If they can only exist as reflections, then there was no way one could come near me now, right? But if they are something else? I could hear distant screeches coming from the direction my place was, but it never got closer. As time passed and I got hungry, I started to feel around for things that I can eat. Aside from whatever I used to cover the glass shards with, there was nothing around me, as if all else disappeared. I had to find a way to go back. Starving to death inside a mirror was never an option for me. But how? If mirrors are doorways, then I must make one to come back. A mirror is something that contains reflections. Would it be possible to make a mirror inside a mirror? After some thinking and self-convincing, I uncovered two pieces of mirror shards and faced them towards the other. Two things happened at the same time. Both pieces started emitting intense beams of light from inside them. One beam would shoot out from one of the pieces and into the other, while the other receives it and emits an even stronger beam. I've somehow created a loop. I put a finger into one of the mirror pieces, and it went through. The one other thing that happened was a screech that erupted right next to me. I need a larger doorway. With no time to think, I scooped up and threw every single piece of shard into the air, and the room lit up with light. I charged at the direction where the lights were the brightest, and fell headfirst into a bustling grocery store. I cried when I saw the aisle descriptions in normal, non-inverted letters. I'm not sure if I've come back to the actual world, or if I've just traveled to another world inside a mirror, an inverted world of an inverted world. I may never find out, but hey, this one is pretty nice. The next story of this video. How long can we survive without sleeping? This is a weird question, I know, but if you know the answer, please let me know. Last week, me and a couple of my friends were hanging out, and one of them, Josh, told us about this game he heard about. A game of dare. The game sounded kind of creepy and stupid. I think he only proposed to play out of boredom, and because he had a crush on Anna, this cute girl in our group, and wanted to impress her. Anyways, the game would go like this. 4 people would stand in 4 corners of a dark room, preferably a big one, each holding a lit candle. 2 Then, the person to start would say the name of whoever's in the next corner, in the clockwise direction of him, followed by ready or not, here I come, and walk towards the next person. 3 When he reaches the next person would blow out his candle, call the next person's name and repeat the process. 4 Do this until everyone's had a turn. If you stop and think for a moment, you will realize that when it goes down to the 4th person, he would be walking to the corner where the first person started out from, and no one will be there to greet him, supposedly. 5. When there's no one to blow out the previous person's candle, whoever still has his or her candle lit should declare that the game has to end, and ask for everyone's permission. When everyone says yes, the game ends. Outright creepy. Not to say a waste of time. After being called chicken a dozen times, I decided it wouldn't hurt to help Josh out a bit. Anna didn't want to play at first, but Josh talked her into it. So in the evening, we went to a small warehouse owned by the company I work for and started the game. Why couldn't we just watch Netflix or something? So we would go in this order, starting from Anna, to Josh, to me, then to Pete. Pete would go to the corner where no one is there anymore and declare the game to end. It takes about 2 to 3 minutes to walk from one corner of the warehouse to the other, so the whole process shouldn't take more than 15. We turned off all the lights, went to our separate corners and lit our candles. From the distance we could see each other's faces being lit by candlelight. We must all look like floating heads, I thought. Then Anna started, Josh, ready or not, here I come, and started walking towards Josh. I could feel that she's a bit scared. When she got to Josh, he blew out her candle, and I could hear him say see. Wasn't so hard? While putting his hand on her mildly shaking hands. My friend can be a jerk sometimes. Josh came to me, I blew out his candle. He whispered, whatever happens, it's just your imagination. I did this before, it's all good. Not understanding a word, I walked towards Pete. I walked and walked. The darkness seemed to be getting darker, and I had this weird feeling that if the candle went out, something bad would happen. The walk could not have been only 2 minutes. I feel like I've been walking towards Pete for a lifetime. Trying to reach that dim candlelight before my own went out. Please don't go out, I will be lost. Then I almost bumped into him. Whoa. Easy there. He blew out my candle, and everything was back to normal. Now I see what Josh meant. He started walking towards the empty corner. About halfway he yelled out. Hey, you guys still there? Yeah, it seemed funny at the time. Then he stopped dead before the corner. I think I saw, the candlelight was so dim, but I saw something that wasn't there before. She was at least twice my height, with pale white pupils and pale white skin, and was bending herself over, looking up at Pete. It must have been my imagination. It was too gruesome to be true. But then we all heard the sound of someone blowing out the candle, and it all went dark. I heard Pete drop to his knees. "Anna, ready or not, here I come." It was the voice of a dozen women whispering at the same time. A dozen women, in agony, hatred, calm, cold. Anna shrieked. Josh rushed to her. I turned the lights on. There was nothing in that corner but Pete, who was trembling all over and obviously had trouble getting up. We all grabbed onto one another and scrambled out. We never spoke of it again. Or so we thought. A few days later, Anna came to me. "Kev, help me. Ever since the game, I've been having a recurring dream whenever I fall asleep. In the dream, I would wake up in my bed, and hear someone at the door. I would always peer out the window, and see a tall woman dressed in rags, bending over in front of the door. At first, she just turned the doorknob, inch by inch, slowly. The first time, I woke up at that. The next day I had the same dream, but this time when I looked out, she twisted her head and looked me in the eye. Her eyes were pale, like those of a dead fish. The moment she saw me she began frantically trying the door. But I knew it was locked. The next day, I could hear her picking the lock. I ran back to my room and locked the door. Every day, she makes more progress. Whenever I fall asleep, she gets closer to me. The night after, I heard her pry open the door to my house. I could hear her searching for me. She stopped in front of my room. Then yesterday, she started to try the lock. I couldn't. She was tearing up as she talked. The woman she described felt like whatever was with us in the warehouse. Is it just a nightmare? Nonetheless, I offered the spare room in my apartment for Anna to stay for a couple of days. I mean, at the very least, the tall thing would have new locks to get through, and that would give us a few days, if this whole thing turned out to be a real threat, right? That night midnight, a phone call from Anna woke me up. Despite the confusion, I picked it up. Anna whispered. I locked the door. I checked that I locked the door. "Anna, what's going on?" "I locked the door to my room before going to bed." "I did. You were calling for me, so I opened the door, and I saw her. White eyes. And I woke up. And the door was opened." "The door was opened." "Anna? Anna." Silence. I was a coward. I rushed to the door, but instead of going out to check on Anna, I quietly locked it. I sat on my bed until dawn. Nothing tried to come in. I noticed that I didn't hang up. "Ready or not, here I come." The voice of a dozen women whispered through the phone. Agony, hatred, calm, and cold.